Okay guys, so what we just did is we looked at production possibilities for a tier for Robinson and Crusoe. Is that how you say Crusoe? And we looked at this and we realized that Crusoe can make a whole lot more coconuts, but he could either do all coconuts 36 or he could do all fish 36 and 0 coconuts, or he could do at point B. But what we're going to realize is that if these two nations trade, Robinson and Crusoe, they could actually do a lot more. And this is where it gets into like the whole gains of trade. Like, you know, if we become isolated, we don't gain much. But if we add to trade, it could cause our PPF to shift outward. And so again, this is a production possibilities frontier. There's 3 ways to move it out further. One is gaining new resources, gaining new capital, and through trade. Trade can cause this to shift outward and we all mutually benefit. And so this next portion, it's going to talk about how to get the math for this. But what I'm going to do with you is I'm going to show you how I teach my students to do it and how we could get around it and not look at all of that stuff. So I'm going to come over here to my white piece of paper and I'm going to set up a chart. I have Robinson. According to that little thing, Robinson can make coconuts, right? And he can make fish. I'm going to just set it up in a little chart like y'all do in algebra. Okay, and he could either do 24 fish or he could do, 24 coconuts. Gosh, I'm crazy. Or 8 fish. Well, we need to figure out what is the opportunity cost. And for us to figure that out, we have to get down to X. And usually when we get down to X, that tells us what they're giving up. So over here, if you've had me in class, we always divide by the lowest, right? 8 divided by 8. Over here, 24 divided by 8. Because what you do to one side in algebra, you do to the other side. So this gives me 1 per every 1 fish. He gives up 3 coconuts, right? And I'm going to box this up because this tells me my terms of trade. But now I need to figure out coconuts. What is 1 coconut and what is my opportunity cost? So I'm going to come over here, 3 divided by 3. 1 divided by a third, right? That's going to give me 1/3 on this side, and this is going to give me 1. Per every 1 coconut, he loses a third of a fish. Okay, so I'm going to come over here for the other guy, and I'm going to do the same type of chart. I'm going to do coconuts and fish. We know he could either do 36 coconuts and 36 fish. Well, I'm going to divide by 36. That gives me a 1-to-1 ratio. Per every 1 fish, he loses 1 coconut. And so his production possibilities frontier, when we looked at it, was a straight line. This is called a constant increasing opportunity cost. Per every 1 unit he gives up, he gains another. Per every 1 he gives up, he gains another. Okay, and so that's one type of production possibilities frontiers where we see a constant. But this tells me per every 1 fish, he's going to give up 1 coconut. Per every 1 coconut, he's going to give up 1 fish. So now let's look at our results. Absolute advantage means who can produce the most. So looking at this, who can produce the most coconuts? Robinson, who can only do 24, or Crusoe, who could do 36. Definitely, he has the absolute advantage in coconuts. When we look at fish, Crusoe again has, because 36 is way more than 8, but he can't do both because of what we talked about of scarcity and the limited factors of production. And so this is why they trade. And so we're going to figure out who has the comparative advantage, who loses the least. So when I look at fish, right, he's going to give up 1 chicken. 1 chicken, not a chicken, a coconut. I'm sorry, guys. I'm just making my own things up over here. So per 1 thing of fish, he gives up 1 coconut. However, over here, per every 1 fish, he gives up 3 coconuts. Who gives up the least? This guy over here. So this guy, he needs to make fish, and our guy who's losing 3 coconuts over here needs to do the coconuts. And I could do the reverse. I could look at coconut. Per every 1 coconut, he gives up a third of a fish, right? Per every 1 coconut, he loses a whole fish. Well, he needs to do fish. He loses a lot of fish. This guy needs to do the coconuts. There's another simple way how I could figure out how people should specialize, and that's by cross multiplying. If I were to take 8 times 36, that gives me 288. That's how much production, that's how much the production possibilities curve would go outward. If I take 24 times 36. Well, those are two bigger numbers than those two, right? That's going to give me 864, I think. So here it is. This one's way more. He should definitely do coconuts and he should definitely do fish. Okay, that was my little cheat. I actually used a calculator for that because I'm not that smart. But there's some people who've done this before in econ. If they ever ask you in economics to do this, you have this, you know this stuff, do it, okay? So by trading, when we originally saw these two curves, right, we saw that there were only 36, right? We saw there was only 24. But now by this trade, I could get 864 resources there, or I could get 288. I want this one right here. And so basically what I just did there with you in the math explains all of this verbiage right here. It explains all of that, and actually it does the charts with it. But comparative advantage, again, it's who loses the least, okay? So we were looking at the whole coconut things, and we saw that Robinson was losing those coconuts, right? So he was losing a lot more coconuts, so he needs to do the coconuts while Crusoe needs to do the fish. So basically, I did all this math that was right here all written out with you in those two charts. So I'm going to stop right here, and we're going to talk about trade and just how trade with the nations causes that production possibilities frontier to go outward. And I showed you right here, right? Instead of having that small amount that they were making in these little graphs right here, right? All of a sudden they could trade this. And that leads to now those nations having way more than when they were doing it on their own. And also those nations wanting to be nice to each other, them wanting to trade, okay? And so the market would be smaller if they didn't trade, but now the market is going to get bigger, okay? So I'm going to stop right here so I can load this, and then we're going to talk about profit motives and behaviors of firms.